Hi, and welcome to the Lensrentals podcast, where we talk about images and the people who make them. I'm Roger Sakala, the founder of Lensrentals.com.
My name is Ryan Hill. I'm the video product development manager at Lensrentals, and today I'm in studio with Ryan Watt and Brighid Wheeler. Ryan is the executive director of the Indie Memphis organization in general, and Brighid is the director of operations and senior programmer, and today we're specifically talking about the Indie Memphis Film Festival. So thanks for coming in, first of all. I imagine you guys are super busy this time of year, so thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
I want to start with when and how did you each start at Indie Memphis?
I think Brighid should start because she started before me.
Well, I moved to Memphis in 2008, I believe, and I'd actually started at a festival in Birmingham, the Sidewalk Film Festival, and the previous executive director there ended up moving to Memphis as executive director of Indie Memphis and sought me out and was like, hey, you want to come help out? So I started volunteering, and over the past 10 years, I've worked with Indie Memphis in various capacities. So I was kind of sought out and recruited.
And for me, I started producing movies in 2009, and I sought out the festival just to learn everything I could and started volunteering immediately after on the screening committee and helping promote the festival. And I joined the board in 2014, and then Eric Jambor, she was just mentioning, our previous director, moved on, and they asked me to fill in as the interim. And after about 3 months, I just really fell in love with the job. And so since 2015, I've been in the role.
So for our listeners who aren't aware, the Indie Memphis Film Festival started in 1998, goes every year for 7 days across, now it's 9 venues?
That sounds about right.
Yeah. It's spread across a few different theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Last year there were 281 films screened. So this is it's a large undertaking. It's not like a single day film festival. So as an operations manager and as the director, how do you think you design this festival to be representative of this city specifically?
Oh, yeah. Well, so also to help people picture kind of the layout, there's a weekend that's really the core of the festival. And so what we've done was we've been able to shut down like a block from traffic, no traffic. And we're very lucky that there's a bunch of venues that are all walkable within a few blocks. And so there's a lot of other festivals I've been to. They're great, but you spend half the day trying to get a car to get across town to get to a venue. So we're very fortunate in that sense. And then for the rest of the week, we've then have kind of like weeknight screenings where it's more focused on a couple prime events. And that allows us to kind of go to different areas of town as well. As far as programming, Memphis is it's about 66% African-American population. And so we added an event last year called the Black Creators Forum. And that was a real game changer for us as far as there were so many filmmakers that we had not come across over the last 2 decades. Black filmmakers that started setting their work that we just took for granted, that we assumed we would be hearing from them in the past, and so half of our filmmakers out of 117 from Memphis were people of color last year, and so that is a unique thing for Memphis that may not be the case in other cities across the country. But we're excited about what that means for filmmakers in other cities that want to bring their films here. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, and I think too, in terms of programming, I focus primarily on the shorts. And a big commitment that I have made to the community here is that I'd say I think it's about 50% of the shorts programming is dedicated to our Memphis-based filmmakers. So it's really, really important as we're bringing in all of these filmmakers from across the U.S. and some internationally that, we really put a spotlight on the talent here. So that is really important that, as we're showing works from across the U.S. and internationally, that we're also then showing those audiences what we can do and showcasing our own stories.
I assume demographically those numbers are an increase from when the festival started.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say going back 2 years ago, I would say less than 10% of the Memphis films were from people of color. And there's no cost for anyone in Memphis to submit. So once again, I just took it for granted that, well, if you live here and you're making a movie, you're probably sending it to Indie Memphis. And so over the last couple of years, I think we learned a lot about being really intentional to reach out to different communities, and so we hope to continue making strides this year. I mentioned the Black Creators Forum, but it's really everything at the festival. That's just a real purposeful element that we build off of for the programming through workshops and panels and the films.
Yeah, and I think that's something that really comes across. If any of our listeners attend the festival, that is intentional and successful. I think there's a real diversity of voices that makes it different from any other festival I've attended.
And we should give props to our artistic director, Miriam Bale, who lives in Los Angeles, so she's not here today. Give her a lot of credit for that, too.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So getting to programming, what are your major focuses when programming the festival, either from a shorts perspective or I imagine your scope is widened at this point. What do you look for programming-wise? It's a broad question.
No, but it's good. There's a lot of different things that I look for, and it can also change from year to year as well, based on like your political landscape, what's happening locally, nationally, things like that. But I think really at the end of the day, what I look for most is new voices, fresh voices, diversity in the lineup, and discovery. Discovery is a huge piece in what we do. So somebody who hasn't necessarily, had the opportunity to showcase their work, what we love to do. And sometimes it is hard being a festival that's towards the end of the year. So you've got this whole festival season before us, before our festival comes up, that it's really, one thing I want to look for is like, who's kind of like on the cusp of doing something great, or maybe even just at the beginning of their career. We really want to be a festival that people look towards or look to submit and say like, that it is attainable to be programmed, that it doesn't seem like this dream to be programmed at Indie Memphis. Like, we want your film, we want to view it, and we want to be able to screen it in hopes that, you're going to go on to do the next greatest, biggest thing. Or maybe you get your start here. So that's really, really important to us.
I guess, it can't speak from direct experience with many other festivals, but I imagine you've attended a few. Do you think your approach to programming is unique?
I think every festival has something unique about their approach to programming. So without being able to really speak to, what the other festivals do, I feel like what Miriam and I do and what we strive to do with our programming team and our associate programmers is what the stories that end up, being programmed in our final slate, that they are unique and that people look at like, that's an interesting choice, or it makes people think about the choices that we made and perhaps why we made them. What is in the story? What is it trying to tell us? I think that's what we hope for ultimately.
I'll just add, having a women-led programming team automatically means, I think, that films are being viewed through a different lens and maybe once again, just other festivals where people may have submitted. And so I think that shows in a lot of the stories that come through. And then something else, I think we'll talk about, but just with it being Memphis, we also just like to look for music content. We have an extensive music video category, and we love music documentaries. And so that's just a nice way to tie into our city's legacy.
Definitely. Yeah. That brings me to my next point, which is, again, for any listeners who have not attended this festival, a pretty unique aspect of it is that there are live musical performances before every screening, which is really cool. One of my favorite things about the festival. How did that come about?
Well, there's a organization that's no longer active in Memphis, I believe a Memphis Music Foundation, I believe is their name, that our exec director worked with to get that launched originally, and then we were able to continue it. And I'll give a shout out to a great festival, the True False Festival in Columbia, Missouri, is one of the only ones I'm aware of that also has music before each film. One thing that's cool is they're bringing in acts all over the country, which is awesome. Ours is 100% Memphis music, We want people coming here to discover these Memphis musicians, and then hopefully they're inspired to maybe include their music in a future film, and just for audiences that live here to discover these great independent artists that work here. So, and as just someone coming into the festival, starting as a volunteer, it was always my personal favorite thing. I loved that instead of staring at advertisements, that we were actually just having this experience even before the movie started.
Yeah. It's sort of, I don't know, weird and a little hippie-y, but it sort of brings the audience together for a thing before the movie gets going. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Everybody seems sort of like on the same page from the beginning. Like, we're all here to see this thing. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an experience.
There's nothing cooler than walking into a theater. If I'm going in to do an intro and you walk in and it's, even just half full or packed, and you see this very diverse audience, and then you've got this musician, and everyone's just kind of like bobbing their head and like really getting into that part leading up to the next experience, which is the film. So yeah, like you said, it does bring everybody in the room together, and you're like, it's like that's a moment of validation of like, yeah, that's another aspect of the program when we did right.
Yeah, and we'll give John Miller with Shangri-La Records credit that he books all of those acts, and he puts a lot of intentionality about trying to pair that music with the tone or vibe of the film. And then, of course, there's many instances where literally the subject might be a musician, and now we have this opportunity to have them play right before the movie.
I know you started as a shorts programmer, and you introduce a lot of the shorts blocks. You have a passion for short film, I imagine.
Yes, I do.
What sort of drew you to shorts specifically?
Oh, goodness, shorts. I think what I love there's a million things, and I could go on all day, and I promise I won't do that. But I think what I really, really love about the short format is that it really forces a filmmaker to show restraint. And I think that's the hardest thing that I think is a commonality amongst filmmakers is restraint. And it is really hard when you're so close to a story that you want to tell. So to be able to tell it in 25 minutes or less, whether it's a proof of concept or it's just going to be its standalone story, I think it's a really excellent exercise for a lot of the roles in which it takes, to make a film, period. But especially for the vision of the director and the writer, if they're not the same individual.
If somebody's listening to this, say, and they're working on or thinking about shooting their first short, what would be your advice to them? Is there something you look for? Are there mistakes you've seen that you would, maybe not want somebody to repeat?
One thing I'll throw out just to piggyback off restraint is, the most common note we talk about is, God, I really liked it. Should have been 3 minutes shorter. She said 25 minutes. 15 minutes is a long short. Keep in mind, your film is going to play with 10 other movies, and an audience is going to be watching all these movies. And as a programmer, she and the team are trying to put together this program that flows. So it's just
and see, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was kind of the first thing that kind of came to mind. And the reason, to give some context to the 25 minutes, that's the requirement for that submission category, 25 minutes or less. If it were up to me, it would be 15 minutes or less. And so I think my biggest thing that I have seen, especially with our Memphis-based filmmakers, but you see it everywhere, talking to programmers across the country, I think sometimes where a director can kind of take a slight misstep is also being the editor of their own work, or not bringing somebody else in to consult. And the thing that I find myself saying the most is, if you're going to submit to me a 20-minute long film, 20 to 25 minutes, because it caps at 25, I really want you to ask yourself first, if it's 25 minutes, is every single minute of those 25 minutes so great and so powerful that it would justify not playing potentially 3 to 5 other short films? So that's kind of how you have to look at it. And that's how I view every film. Like, is this so great? Is every single minute so powerful and deserves the 25 over these potentially 3 to 5 others that, could be the next discovery or whatnot. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I kind of never thought of it that way.
The longer your film, the more kind of pressure you're putting on the festival to say, this is going to take up a significant amount of our real estate.
Yep. So when you look at the whole real estate, half for features, half for shorts, right? Then half of the shorts are for essentially for Memphis-based filmmakers and then national filmmakers. So you kind of have to look at it and kind of break down an overall schedule and think of it very practically like that.
So one of the other things that struck me in attending this festival for the last few years is the number and quality of volunteers you guys have. Everybody seems like excited to be there and knows what they're doing, which is not always the case with the volunteer staff. How do you approach getting volunteers and training them? How does that just work logistically?
Oh, it's a beast. So I have obviously, I'm coming into the director of operations role this year. I've kind of acquired overseeing that process, and we have two really amazing volunteer coordinators, Alicia Rose and Mandy Horde. And thank goodness for their brains, because it is really, really hard to recruit and schedule, and especially with volunteers, there's not, you have to really be committed, and a lot of times we do get no-shows. So it's part of it, Mm-hmm. But because you put better people at that role than yourself, and what they have done by recruiting and coming up with creative ways to recruit volunteers really adds to the overall quality. We do a number of training sessions. All of our venue managers are trained. So if, volunteers miss a session, they can train on the spot. So we try to be as thorough as possible when it comes to training from top down. So if Ryan's there, oftentimes you'll see Ryan in the middle of the festival training someone or scanning or showing someone how to scan. So it's really important that everybody across the board, no matter what position, knows what needs to be done in order to execute at the highest level possible.
Well, I will say, though, it still remains one of our biggest challenges. So It's great to hear that from your view, it's a smooth operation, because it's still very difficult every year, just, finding the volunteers and getting everyone, communication lines going. So thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
And if anybody listening wants to volunteer, who should they contact? How can they do that?
The answer to most of those, any question, is indiememphis.com. And then at the top, there's a volunteer button, and then you can put in your information. And then as far as the festival, shifts start being added to our online system. But yeah, really just volunteering for the first time, then you start meeting staff and meeting people, and then you start to figure out kind of where you're going to enjoy volunteering the most, and where we have the most needs.
And if you have any questions too, if you don't want to quite sign up just yet, you can email volunteer@indiememphis.com, and that's going to be the quickest way to get any questions that you might have answered before you go and sign up.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll put a link to all that stuff in the show notes.
Awesome.
What would you say, this is another broad question, what would you say is the most challenging part of the festival from an operations standpoint?
Having so many moving plates at once. Granted, I am very, very lucky to have an incredible support out of our core staff. Because everybody is responsible for operations. Just because I'm director of operations, we're all responsible. So that support obviously is so crucial, and I'm very, very grateful to have it. But yeah, it really is. It's managing all of those things. It's multiple venues, multiple people, people running those venues, and then you've got all these volunteers. But then also at the same time, you've got the programming. I need to make sure our filmmakers being taken care of. How's the block party running? So it's all of that stuff that can be really complicated. But I think it really comes down to our intentionality of putting the right people in the right places, that even though right now it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much. It doesn't necessarily always feel like that once we get to the festival, because you're like, oh, I've done all this worrying ahead of time. We've been so intentional about talent and putting those people in the right places that my goal every year is that none of us are running around going, oh my goodness, because there's someone to take care of it, and it's not just Ryan or just me or just Joseph.
Mm-hmm. And also because there are so many different venues, we've got basically during that busy weekend 7 different events running at all times. Mm-hmm. All those venues have all their own little quirks, and outside of our great partner Malco Theaters, the others are not traditional movie theaters, so we're retrofitting, turning a performing arts space, multiple, 4 different performing arts spaces into movie theaters. And then all of them, even the stupidest thing, wait, where's the light switch in this one? They, some are old, some are new, so they just all have their own quirks. And the other thing I'd add is just the schedule. It's not so much the operations, but that's there's just this massive Excel spreadsheet grid, and we're just playing with it up to the last second before announcing the schedule, trying to get all these things with all different run times to all fit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Literally an hour before the preview party last year.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And to make it clearer for our listeners, if you have not attended this festival, we're talking about, and stop me if I throw out a stat that doesn't sound right.
Okay.
Last year, close to 300 films across 7 different venues.
I'd say like 7 during that weekend, and then we have some others throughout the week. Yeah.
Right. It goes for 7 days, or at least nowadays it goes for a full 7 days. Some of those venues, like you mentioned, are movie theaters. Some of them are not. They're generally like a black box type of theater. And then this is across 2 different sections of town. So we're talking about downtown Memphis and midtown Memphis, which is like a 20-minute drive away. So this is a really serious logistical challenge. And you guys do a great job.
And all the hotels here are downtown.
Right.
So,
Yes.
Yeah,
which
I didn't
is
even
not,
think about that part of it.
That's a
yeah,
whole
so
other
you
thing.
have to put up filmmakers from out of town.
Yeah.
Transportation's a real thing.
And then also, even outside of the film part of it, there is catering, hospitality tents.
Block party.
Yeah. There are heaters.
Well, you know,
Porta potties.
So, we have about 90 events, and so that's 90 different music acts setting up and tearing down just to play 20-minute sets. So even just the music by itself is a whole thing. So anyway.
Yeah.
Now you're getting us nervous.
Yeah. Now
Challenging
you're
gig.
going, wait, what do we do every year?
Do you have a favorite event or film that you've been a part of?
This is probably the easiest question I'll answer. Honestly, I love all of the things that we do, we're planning to do, and would have done. But I think my most favorite event that we've done was during the block party last year. It was on Friday night. We had Unapologetic do a music showcase where Unapologetic had their artists, like they curated their artists to play for a few hours. And to me, nothing felt more Memphis and more such a beautiful showcase of the talent that we have in our city. I try not to get emotional because it was just so much fun. It was like really this coming together of all of these things in the city that are so important and so incredible that can all come together on one night. And you saw so many people there. But not even more than that, but just personally, the fact that Ryan and I, during the festival, never stop. People are like, oh, you didn't catch that movie? I'm like, I'm sorry. Do you think that I watched a movie in the theater during the festival? That's great. The fact that Ryan and I were both, you saw us both out there, we were able to stop for longer than 30 seconds and really enjoy all of the things that we have spent the past 10 months working on. And it was just a moment where we could be like, wow, this is incredible. We love our city, we love our festival, and we love what we do for it. So for me, that's going to remain one of the best things ever. So thank you, Unapologetic, for giving us that experience. It's like I said, it's not something that we get hardly at all.
Yeah, if you've heard of the music producer I Make Mad Beats, that's his label, Unapologetic, and he's got like a dozen plus artists that are amazing. And so it was a great variety of music and packed tent in the middle of Cooper Street in Midtown Memphis. Mine, it's so hard. Like her, I didn't pick a movie because there's just so many movies. So last year, at the end of the Black Creators Forum, we had Boots Riley, whose movie Sorry to Bother You last year came out. It was one of my favorites. And he's an activist, hip-hop artist from the coup. So, like, everything he said was gold. I mean, the whole audience was just on the edge of their seat. And we transitioned into a pitch rally of filmmakers on stage pitching for their next projects to win money. And that was just an event I was really personally involved with putting together, and I was just thrilled to see how well it went. And just everyone left saying, oh my God, like how do we help all 12 of these filmmakers get their movies made? And now to see, now almost a year later, a number of them taking those steps to get their movies done. So there's so many movies I could name, but just I think the experience part of the festival are the things that I get really excited about.
Yeah. I'm happy, but not surprised that neither of you named a movie. It is like I go to that, I go to this festival, and many people go to this festival to see movies, but it's probably half of the appeal. There's so much other stuff going on. It's a real it's a community event more than anything. It's really great.
Well, and then I'm glad you said that's so much of, we want people, we don't want you to think you have to be a film person to attend. You don't and people have this perception about it that, it could come across as elitist or whatnot to be a film person. But that the fact that the block party is that people all throughout the weekend hanging out in Overton Square can just literally accidentally stumble upon this and be able to participate. And if that does eventually translate into them, being in a movie the next day or whatnot, amazing. If not, I really hope that they're enjoying, that free aspect of the festival because it is open to the public. So
Right, yeah. I forgot to even mention that. This is a block party in a pretty much literal sense. So you don't have to have a pass to come to these kinds of things. There are free musicians all week. There are panels that are free as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if you're just broadly interested in this and don't want to buy a pass for like a full time or even see a movie at all, you can come by and experience this kind of stuff.
It's a great way to get your feet wet.
and even to see one movie, you can buy a ticket for $10. Some people also assume, oh well, I don't want to invest in a pass or I don't have a full week. Oh, no problem. Just pick one movie and come see one movie.
So for filmmakers who are listening to this, what are some opportunities for them beyond screenings, workshops, panels, things like that?
It just occurred to me, y'all were part of a workshop we had last year that's still the one everyone talks about.
That was really, really cool.
Yeah.
It was awesome to be a part of that.
So it was a cinematography workshop, but James Laxton that shot Barry Jenkins' Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk, paired with Ashley Connor from Broad City, Madeline's Madeline, a lot of movies. And they together did this workshop on cinematography that covered a lot. But the thing that many people brought up was lighting different skin tones. And I thought, that just to get into such a specific thing like that. And anyway, but yeah, so we have panels and workshops throughout the weekend, and those are open for anyone to come attend. And just the level of guests, I think, that Miriam and our programming staff bring in, many of them come in to be on the jury, and then they participate in these panels. So it's a really high level of talent that's coming in for the week.
Yeah, and always go to the parties and network.
Oh, yeah.
And I know it's like that word network, and everyone's like, oh, God, roll your eyes. I get it. I wish there was a different word for it. But it is really the best connections you can make in such like a very low-pressure situation. When we curate these parties and when we plan them, they're meant for everybody to relax and really enjoy the entire festival atmosphere without having that pressure to perform or do this or do that. Just everybody can kind of come together over a beer, over a soda, whatever, your drink of choice, and just be able to talk to one another and just relate. And especially, being able to do that with the backdrop of Memphis, I think is really very cool.
Definitely. Yeah, I can relate to that. I grew up here. Interested in filmmaking when I was in high school, and if you described an event to me like that as a networking event, zero chance. I will not show up to that thing.
Yep.
But just have a beer and talk to people. That's an easier way to describe it.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, it happens very organically, but then I just get excited when I see people that do then actually meet and then end up collaborating.
Yes.
It
We've been a professional and love connection for many years
yeah.
for festival and industry people.
Yeah.
I would like to hear some more details about that.
Well, there's these audience members, this man and woman that sat by each other, and then they ended up hanging out the whole festival. And now a year later, they're still together, and they come to all of our events. So come to Indie Memphis to find love.
Yeah,
exactly.
You will get married. We guarantee it.
Yes.
All right. That seems like a great place for a break.
Yeah.
We'll take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll kind of talk about the future of the festival, where you think it's going.
Awesome.
I'm Sarah McAlexander, and this is a spotlight with Nathan Ross Murphy, one of our video techs here at Lensrentals.
How's it going?
Thanks for coming in. What kind of creative work do you do outside of here?
Ooh, a lot. So I'm a director, producer. I act. I do everything from special effects, lots of blood, gore, stuff like that, to digital effects and post and sound. It's really whatever the project needs. As an indie filmmaker, you just got to roll up your sleeves, step in there, and do it.
So what role were you in the beginning? What got you started?
Well, I went to film school at the University of Memphis, and I graduated in 2012. And fresh out the gates, I wrote my first short film and got right into directing it and learned so much right off the bat. I haven't really looked back since. I've pretty much consistently put out at least one short film a year, and then I'll do all the editing for it, and then on the side I'll also act and stuff like that.
Do you have a favorite project that you've worked on?
I think each new project is my favorite project. I look at it like art is like a hill, and you're constantly getting better and moving up the hill, and you're looking down at, like, I look down on my previous projects. Only like recently have I learned to actually appreciate them.
And do you have a dream or goal in filmmaking that you're looking to reach that would be totally ideal?
I think I'm there. Like, I really just enjoy the process. I don't need my name on a sidewalk or anything like that. I just really enjoy telling stories, and then sitting in the audience and getting to hear and see their reactions to it it's awesome.
And do you have favorite gear that you shoot with?
Steadily, probably the red. It's gorgeous. It's fun to shoot with. It's guaranteed to look great. So I really enjoy that.
Is there an upcoming project you'd like people to know about?
It's called The Indignation of Michael Busby, and it's a genre-bending, weird little film that I don't think I've seen anything like it. I guess I can compare it to, like, Walter Mitty, but a horror, if that makes any sense. It's odd. It's an odd little tale.
Where can people find you?
So NathanRossMurphy.com. Just my name.com. That's it.
That's easy enough, and we will link that in the show notes. Thanks for answering my questions.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, welcome back. We're going to talk about the future of the Indie Memphis Film Festival, the steps you guys are taking next. What are some things you'd like to do in the future?
Well, yeah, you mentioned earlier, as an organization, we're called Indie Memphis. We started as the Indie Memphis Film Festival 22 years ago. And then about 6 years ago, we started adding more programs and opportunities to support filmmakers. And so that's where really year-round we've got these, we have filmmaker residencies, we have our Indie Grants program providing cash and services for local filmmakers to make movies here, and Lensrentals is one of the sponsors of that. And we keep adding those type of opportunities, and that's where our biggest growth is. And also we feel where we can kind of find our place nationally for filmmakers as well, bringing them to Memphis and getting them involved. So that's where we continue to, I'm constantly submitting to new grants, seeking out new partners to add more and more support for filmmakers to help them make their next films, help them get more support, more professional development, mentoring. Related to that, we have a youth program for students grades 7 through 12. And then all of that just feeds into the festival. So the more great work and more films that are being made here, just the stronger and bigger the festival becomes. So that's really where I think the biggest amount of growth is for us and focus.
And I have sort of a sidebar.
Yeah.
We will get back to like film festival specifics for sure. But I should mention, I guess, in disclosure type of thing, I am a member of Indie Memphis outside of my role at Lensrentals.
Oh, thank you.
And as such, I'm on your email list, and I got a survey asking questions that seem to be regarding you opening a physical theater space.
Right.
Can you talk about that at all? I'm genuinely mega curious about this.
Sure.
I want it to happen very much. If it's a possibility.
Yeah, well, so I'll plug, there's this great organization out of Minneapolis called Art Space. They open the Art Space Lofts.
Oh, yeah.
Here.
I think I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, so affordable, nice living space for artists in South Main, Memphis. They decided to stay active in Memphis and open this program called Immersion. And we are one of 10 arts organizations going through an 18-month cohort. The consultants come into Memphis once a month, and we all get together, and we all each as organizations have a space challenge or opportunity. And so what we as Indie Memphis are working on is, yes, we would love to have our own theater. When and how we can accomplish that is the question. what kind of capital campaign and funds would we need to raise? What would it look like? What's great is, we're friends with a lot of these other film festivals and organizations around the country. So the Sidewalk Film Festival is about to open their cinema center in Birmingham. We'll be there for the festival, and they're scheduled to open days before the festival. So
I just took a tour of it, and it's beautiful.
Oh, cool. We're very close with the Belcourt Theater in Nashville, who's awesome. We go to this event, Art House Convergence, the 3 days before Sundance every year, and I'm on the board of an organization called Film Festival Alliance. So basically, we've got a lot of great partners and other organizations where we're kind of seeing their best practices. And I can say on a personal level, I'm determined to make this happen. And that's why we have a film series throughout the year. Every week we show movies with the intention of finding great movies that otherwise are not playing on the big screen in Memphis. And so the idea with that is really just trying to kind of a proof of concept, just kind of, and it's been great. 3 years in, the audiences keep growing. So like yourself, I think there is a hunger for it. Mm-hmm. And so the question is just, we got such great, we got very enthusiastic responses from the survey, and also 100 different theoretical ways we could accomplish this. So we're trying.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned.
My fingers are crossed.
Okay.
Are there any specific events or changes that you all are looking forward to for this year's festival?
Well, just every year we keep kind of adding elements to grow the festival. For people that live in Memphis, they're more likely to know the names of these venues, but the Crosstown Theater, the beautiful new theater at Crosstown Concourse, which for those of you not from here, it's a gigantic Sears building that seemed like just an impossible development.
Yeah. I believe at one point the largest abandoned building in the country.
I believe it. It's massive, and now it's full of activity, and it's great that they're so devoted to the arts. So that will be our opening night venue. There's also Ballet Memphis has their beautiful new space near Overton Square, so that's been added as a festival venue. And then the new Malco Powerhouse that just opened downtown, we'll be showing some encore screenings there. So we just continue to kind of add venues in different parts of town. And when you all are listening to this, just be looking for October 1st, going to IndieMemphis.com. That's when you'll be able to see what the program is and look at the schedule. We are still, we get in this moment where it's like a month out from having to book all the films. And it goes from us knowing very little to all of it within a month, because our submissions are just closing now, and we're just having all those conversations about what films we'll be playing. So, anything you want to add to that, Bridget?
I think that's great.
Okay.
All right. I think you already mentioned the website, but what's the best way for people to find out more information about the festival and your organization in general?
I mean, the website, but certainly social media. I mean, we're very active on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All of those are Indie Memphis, INDIE Memphis. And that's really, I mean, we put out a lot of communications. So if you're following any of those, you'll know what we're up to.
Yeah, if anybody who's listening, especially, I would almost say especially people from outside Memphis, if you're considering going to this film festival, come to this film festival. It's really, really cool. The fact that the venues are sort of spread out around the city gives you an opportunity to see the city from multiple viewpoints. The music gives you sort of an insight into this city. I think you'll learn more about Memphis by attending this film festival than you would learn about Colorado from attending Sundance. It's very representative of this place. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and you can get an Airbnb really affordably. I mean, you could do a weekend as a pretty affordable trip and get a lot out of it.
Yeah, it is not an expensive place to stay.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, thank you both for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to the Lensrentals podcast. If you have any questions or comments, let us know at podcast@lensrentals.com. I'll leave with this quote from Ansel Adams. There are always two people in every picture, the photographer and the viewer.